Hi, I'm Tall Paul and you're listening to the House Culture Podcast.
House Culture.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode in Season 2 of the House Culture Podcast. I'm your host and managing editor at House Culture, Matt Rouse. I tell you, it feels great to be back on air, and hopefully we're helping you out with a little taste of clubland whilst we move through this lockdown period. The reaction to the first 2 episodes in this series have been incredible. So many of you have listened to our chat with the legend that is Norman Cook and the Ibethan icon and creative director at Pike's Hotel, Dawn Hindle. In those chats we covered everything from Norman's love of art and DJing through to Dawn's time setting up Manumission, creating Ibiza Rocks and taking over the island institution that is Pike's Hotel. If you haven't listened to those episodes already, they are highly recommended, even if I do say so myself. And don't be afraid to get yourself some dusty digital fingers by digging through our back catalogue of episodes from Season 1. In there you'll find conversations with folk like Danny Clockwork, Terry Farley, Gordon Mack, John Trencher and many more. Also, if you've only just discovered this podcast and are wondering what house culture is all about, the elevator pitch is: we are a collective of house music fans who have come together through our mutual love of the beat to celebrate the spirit of house music. We're on Instagram at houseculturenet, so come and join us on that virtual dance floor and we can come together to revel in all the things related to this beautiful scene. Okay, let's get moving on this 3rd episode in this 2nd series, shall we? In this one, we chat to a DJ who some might say is a giant of the dance music scene. Of course, it can only be Tall Paul. In this chat, he tells us how him and his family were in the right place at the right time during the birth of modern clubland in London.
So, Turnmills came along, the Turnmill building, so we became this all-night licensed, legal venue in the heart of London. It was the only one.
What kind of equipment you needed in your venue in order to take it to the next level?
We had this water-cooled laser. I swear, if this thing had exploded, it would have created like a black hole, I think, in the universe. This was 150 grand shit, you know, this equipment.
Just what it was like being an in-demand DJ during the Super Club era.
It just went off, you know. Friday I was doing 1 or 2, Saturday I was doing 1 or 2, you know, and it was just nuts. Every town had a club that was doing nights and we were just turning up and they were packed.
And what happened that time you met the godfather of house music, Frankie Knuckles?
I am in complete awe. I'm ready to get on my bloody knees here, you know. And he was like, "How you doing, Paul?" Knew my name, knew even the madness that I would be making, that there was nothing on his tip. It just blew me away.
We cover all of that and so much more. So get yourself ready for a trip through trade at Turnmills to the gallery at Ministry. This is Tall Paul.
House Culture.
Hi Paul, thanks so much for inviting us over to your place to record the House Culture Podcast.
Yeah.
Much appreciated. Right, you've been on the scene as a DJ since the very beginning, still play high energy house music to crowds all over the world. But what we get all of our guests to do is to start at the very beginning. How did you first discover music that you loved?
I have been asked this a few times. I think it really stems back to my dad would come home with records. He had a small stint in his life that he had a record shop down in Tottenham Court Road, just off Tottenham Court Road in London. And he had a newsagent opposite as well, because my family come from the sort of print industry. So all my uncles and granddad and stuff, they all worked on the sort of Daily Express and Evening Standard and stuff like that. So some of these guys used to progress and actually buy shops, you know, newsagents, because they had the connections and stuff. Anyway, so my dad had a newsagent, and there was a shop across the road from him that I think was a failing music shop, and he was a big music lover. And so suddenly, from a very young age, I can remember records everywhere, vinyl, and there was a front room in our old house when we moved up to Whetstone that my brother and I were not allowed anywhere near. This was sort of locked away to keep the kids out of it, and that was where all the records used to sit. And so, you know, I was fascinated by them, the pictures the words, the stories that they used to create, and I'd get lost in there and sitting there just listening to the collection that was building up in this front room. And that is probably the fire that ignited into just learn about them, each one, the story of each record, each album. They were albums then, and then I used to get, as a kid, Christmas would come and my uncles and aunties would buy me little singles, the vinyl, and I would have them in a little sort of little collection, like a little mini record box, and that was it. It was with me, and it has been with me ever since.
Yeah. And what was the type of music that was in that forbidden room?
Oh, I mean, everything from the Kinks, the Who, Rolling Stones, Jethro Tull, ELO, the Police, and a load of obscure stuff as well that every now and then I come across, and folky sort of music as well that was in, and all this was in the car as well. There was tapes that my dad used to make. So there was a lot of influence, in my young ears. And, I hear these tunes now, some of the older stuff, and it brings me back to that room. It brings me back to the car. It brings me back to my dad. And that's really nice. That's a great memory jogger. And they all have a little story and a little memory attached to them. And I've still got some of them, somewhere scattered around the house, some of these albums that I managed to keep.
Cool. So how did, at that point, you obviously had a love for music and discovering stuff and learning about stuff. Was there ever, did you think I want to bring this to other people, to an audience?
So there was three major avenues, if you like. So the first one, so now I'm buying records as a hobby. I'm at school, the dinner money, I'm off down to Woolworths, I'm buying singles, I'm taping the radio shows, I'm listening to the charts on the Sunday. So I was building up a little collection of my own. I had the little turntable in the front room when we used to sneak in there to play them. And my dad had a pub. So what happened was, he had this newsagent. Underneath was a basement. The basement became a very small, similar to like a Shoreditch house, like a little club. It was a private members club, and it was all smoky, cigars. You could sort of come down and drink during the afternoon where you weren't allowed to back then. You had to shut at 2:30, 3 o'clock, most of the pubs. And so if you want to carry on your meetings or your boozy lunches, this is where you could go. And it was all private. You had to pay a small membership. And so that done really well for my dad. And then the breweries or whatever start offering him things. And short story, we ended up with a pub in Finsbury Park called the George Roby, big double-fronted, really, really beautiful pub. And it had a big side part to it that was just derelict. So my dad got in there and changed it round, cleaned it up, and made it a live venue. Big Irish community around there. So it was the Pogues and Christy Moore and the Dubliners and all these sort of bands coming in. And, that done really well. He got bought out of that and then started looking around for something similar to his first little private club. So Turnmills came along, the Turnmill building.
What year was that?
80, so I was at school still, 85, 86, something like that. So went down there. It was a lot smaller than what it became, but it was a Art Deco, this dream that he had, similar to Cheers. It was a combination of Cheers and Minder, the guy that had the hello Arthur, him. He had some obsession with that. He wanted that sort of, it was like that, but just a bit more, in the Cheers sort of deco. And then that went along for about a year, 2 years. But what we used to do, we used to do a small little disco on a Friday for local people, everyone in Clerkenwell and Holborn, Old Street. We used to come down there, and we had a couple of DJs down there, and I used to sit and watch and hang out and listen. And some of them I used to go record shopping with them. They knew the guys in the shops, and they could get the little white labels. So I was just loving it,
Yeah.
But in what happened in parallel, some friends of mine that I met out clubbing were doing sort of weddings and parties, for hire. So they had a big record collection, and the link, that linked us together. And we sat around one night and said, you know what, Sunrise FM is good fun and Centre Force is rocking away. Why don't we start a radio station, a pirate, which sounded like it's a lot of fun, a lot of risky fun for teenagers. I thought, yeah, let's do this. There was 4 tower blocks actually in Swiss Cottage. We call them the Weetabix blocks. There was a couple in Abbey Road as well, Boundary Road. And one of the guys had these 5 FB keys that you could get access to all the gates and places you're not supposed to go. And they had like a little CB history, you know, they used to do the CB stuff. So they knew their way around the cables and the aerials and stuff. So off we went, and that was sort of running parallel with the club. And then my dad decided to apply. There's a big story behind this. Anyway, he applied for a 24-hour music and dance license. It was to do with the council trying to up their game. It was due to King's Cross had all these amazing plans developed for it. It was due to the links to Europe on the train and people coming over to London and going, what's going on after 2 o'clock? We're being kicked out. We can't do anything. So there was a few councils toying with the idea to, you know, this is why all the raves are going on outside in farmyards and fields and stuff, you know, and ecstasy, and everyone was worried, all the parents are freaking out, and they were trying to get it back into a club environment. Anyway, so he took a bit of advantage of that, and I don't know how, he never really told me how he got it, but we got granted it, and that was it. It all changed after that.
So that was what, around 1987-ish?
87, 88. Yeah. That's when the application went through, and 1988.
Yeah. So how did the music change from those early parties?
I was going out on a Saturday with friends to these events and trying to find these parties, you know, and if we didn't get in anywhere, we'd end up in the Camden Palace. That was our little local. There was a Monday night there. Everywhere it just went rave crazy because it literally happened overnight. With our lunchtime business was where it was busy, you know, doing the food and everything else. There was a sort of mini crash at the end of the 80s, towards the end of the 80s, and it affected a load of the clients that used to come down. You know, it was back then, you know, like loads of money for Harry Enfield. Everyone, it was like loads of money. People, all the city guys, all the people in the print, everyone just sort of had this abundance of money, and they were chucking it around everywhere. And then it stopped. There was a mini crash. The interest rates went up. Yeah, so we became this all-night licensed legal venue in the heart of London. It was the only one.
Yeah.
So my dad got hoodwinked a couple of times for these all-night parties where, you know, we were licensed to say, 1,000, and 4,000 would turn up, and it was for a video shoot.
You're right.
Or it was a private party, you know, and it was one of these guys that got cancelled from one of these, you know, these warehouse raves, illegal ones, and that caused a lot of bother because we were under review a lot with this license. You know, we had to keep our nose clean, and otherwise they'd take it off us as quick as they granted it. So we were toying around with what to do and how to do it, and then we started this thing on a Friday called Space, and it had, I think Steve Lee used to start, Smoking Joe would be down there, Groove Rider would be down there. Did Carl Cox play that? Basically, a lot of my hit, Danny Rampling, a lot of these guys are like, what? I was like, Jesus, you know, I used to go and see Danny all over the place, Danny Rampling. And Groove Rider as well, playing at Heaven. You know, these are the guys I'm hearing on the radio and the Pirates and looking at flyers, and now they're playing at the club. So it's like, oh my God, this is amazing, you know. So I'd be doing the Friday night down there, and we just shut at 2 and we open at 3 for the all-nighter. And it came with its new problems, if you like, you know, new issues. Drugs were such a massive, you know, no, and you got to try and do as much as you can on the door, and because we were the first to try and write the book on how to do this right and how to make everyone safe in there and everyone's having a good time, and you know, you're giving people a nice experience. So it was, you know, a lot of learning on our feet, but I was just loving it with the music. You know, I just couldn't get enough. It was just, the timing. So Space went on for a bit, and then Lawrence, this guy, came on board. I think Lawrence Malice had lots of connections in the Soho, you know, circles, the fashion crowd, and wanted to do an all-nighter. I'm missing out some time frames here, but basically trade started either a year or 18 months after we got the license.
Yeah.
And that was the Saturday all-nighter.
That started like 3 a.m.
It started at 3 a.m. and went on till, it was supposed to shut at 7, then it became 8, then 9, then 10, then I got involved. Then I started playing. I started playing 9 to 11. Then Tony DeVitt got involved. Then I got moved from 11 till 1, 11 till half 12. Can you believe?
Wow.
And after that, I think my dad said, listen, we're not going any later. This is mental. The staff are like zombies. Well, we're going to do 2 shifts, you know. That just flew. That was and the music, I was really into that music. So I
Yeah.
was doing the pirate stuff, but I was playing a very similar. And I remember going down to trade and thinking, gee, wow, we're on the same tip here. This is crazy. This is a mixed gay night. And I'm playing, the Zero B's sort of stuff and Glam Hell's Party and all these tracks on the radio. And it was astounding how the link, how the music had crossed over. But the energy down there, the colours, the vibe, it was so infectious. The early days of trade were my favourite, you know, because you'd have like Malcolm playing and Smoking Joe, and then it would progress and it would get up to Daz Saund, who would just take it on a wild one, and then Trevor Rockcliffe would come on after and stonk it, and it used to have this amazing progression. Talk about when Dad's played Age of Love down there for the first time, and we had this laser. My dad was obsessed with this laser and just getting it brighter and bigger and bigger and brighter. And that day, I remember I drove up to Grantham to get this 2 metre tube. The tube was as long as me. We had this water-cooled laser, and it had its own 3-phase supply. It was, I swear, if this thing had, exploded, it would have created like a black hole, I think, in the universe. This thing, it was so illegal. You weren't allowed to. It had to be well above head height, 2 metres above. Anyone had been to Turnmills, that just didn't exist.
Yeah.
And to get the red and the blue was the most difficult. I remember the red was the colour. If you could get a really strong red, this was 150 grand shit, this equipment. Anyway, that night he played, people still remind me of this when they heard Age of Love for the first time, when that laser was doing all that. I mean, Jerry from Who's Tune said, that night will stay with us for that, just to hear that record, when that laser and all that smoke and all in that environment, that,
Wow.
Yes, and in trades, off trade went, then we tried different Fridays. I tried one, Jerry from Who's tried one, and it was always in the shadow of the Saturday. We couldn't really get out of that. Everyone all the cab drivers, it's that gay club. No, it's not a gay club. We have one gay night. There's 6 other days, but I think they used to see all the nutters going down there. And then our other long one started, the gallery. When was that? 93, was it? 94? I'm missing loads out here, Matt. Because it's sort of 3 phases to Turnmills days. There was the one where it was just a wine bar.
Yeah.
Then getting this late night thing. And then the expansion as well, because, we couldn't get enough people through the door. So we were just expanding each unit down Turnmill Street, basically, towards the station.
I mean, the building itself is huge, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There's so many. I remember going in there, and every time I went in there, there's a different bit open.
Well, the reason why it was like that, because the sub-basement part of the club had, there wasn't really much need for it, and people didn't really want offices without windows. I tell you, it was a lot of photographic studios. That's what predominantly most of them units were. And during that period of the late 80s, early 90s, they just started to move out. They were moving off different places. And so we just ended up just swallowing these units up. So then we'd knock through that wall, and then we'd knock through this wall, and then we'd knock through that wall, and it was just bigger. But it used to create these little sort of corridors and little labyrinths and staircases going up and down, which was its charm, I suppose, in the way that it ended up. But if you had a few too many shandies, you were going to get lost, I remember my friend who used to see him going across the wall with his hands, and he'd had a few, and what he goes, eventually I will find an exit or a doorway, but I'm just sort of working my way across, to try and find whether the lights had gone or something, or was a bit or too much smoke.
So I suppose you're doing your stuff on a pirate station that you've set up yourself.
Yeah.
At that point, are you like, I've basically got access to one of the best clubs in London with this license, I've got to get in there, or did it come just more naturally?
No. So the pirate station was running, and that was so much fun. I can't tell you, everyone had a purpose and a job. And I met some people.
What was the station? Was it Touchdown FM?
Touchdown was the late one. We started with one called CLR, Central London Radio.
Yeah.
Out of West Hampstead, Kilburn area. And that was the sort of start of it. And that was on 105.8. Probably we were getting too much heat from the DTI. Shutting down. We changed the name and moved down the FM band to 94.1. With Tony J, who I met at the Camden Palace, who was the technician guy, knew his way around, as I said, the CB world. And his mate Kenny K, who was the gung-ho hanging off buildings. We can do this. It's 2 a.m. We've got to do it. We've got to change it. And there was his friend Dean as well. You know, just a really good community. And I met some great people. And we were never, our paths would never have crossed. You know, a right array of real cool people. And the music was why we were all there, you know. And it got to the point, Touchdown got to the point where there was no more slots available. There was nothing. 6 a.m, 4 a.m, 2 a.m, gone, you know.
Wow.
And it had I think it had a 9-month, 10-month run without getting shut down, which I don't know what the history books are now, but at the time it was one of the longest ones ever.
Yeah.
Because you get calls from the other pirates. We were all paranoid that, you know, we were going to get...
And when something got shut down, was it just they'd found the aerial or they'd found your studio? Or
if you weren't really on their radar, and they would have to come out and do the rounds, and your signal wasn't drifting into, you know, legal stations... I think that may have been a reason as well, because when we were up the other end of 105, I remember there was a problem with a gas board. There was a gas board frequency up there, an emergency frequency or something, and we would drift into it. When the unit used to get too hot, the signal would start to drift. It didn't like it, so it was always a thing to get this box in a ventilated system somehow. Fans, the little internal fans, but they used to make noise, so you had to, and that sometimes that noise would transfer through the unit. So ideally up in the tower block where the lift is, tucked away behind somewhere, so it's difficult to get to. So yeah, they would come along, the DTI, and as long as you really weren't pissing them off, they would just cut the cable.
Yeah.
And that would be enough just to short the box, and the box was dead. Sometimes they would come up and, you know, and be a bit more heavy-handed, break aerials, snap aerials. You know, they're not going to start climbing up with these scaffold poles, you know, these 15-foot scaffold poles precariously up on the side of a lift shaft on the top of a roof that, you know, you're 40 floors up. Yeah. So, I mean, we had Goldie come on the show with Chemistry and Storm.
Wow.
And that's how crazy. I think it was a Sunday morning at like 6, because there was no other slots to give, and he came along with the two girls, the DJs, you know, God rest their souls, and he had some music, and it was like, holy, you know, that metalhead stuff, you know, and it was ahead of the game. This shit was fucking, you know, the production style, you know, that time stretching, all that at the early days when I was like, wow. And he got given the main one of the main slots quite quickly, because you could just tell he wasn't going to hang around. Yeah. But he lived in one of those tower blocks in Swiss Cottage, and we ended up putting one of the rigs in his flat. He lived up there with two great big dogs, and they DTI. The police came round to try and get it one day, and he chucked it out the window, and it had about 30-40 metres of cable on it, and he's just lobbed it out the window. And I remember Tony and I driving up there, I think, and we were going, what? And he said, look, we could see this cable and this black box where he's just like hoyed it out the window, and it stayed on it, and it's swinging down. God, we always used to get that call, you know, the rig's gone, or they've cut it. But when we had this massive run, we were just stockpiling all these rigs. So we were back on. I think we had about 5 or 6 ready to go, powerful rigs. You know, we could reach Brighton from that tower block in Swiss Cottage. We used to get calls from Brighton, 150 watt, whatever it was. Wow. But we could never get over Hampstead. That was a problem, getting back over the hill, right, up to sort of Barnet and north. It was that bloody the top of Whitestone Pond around there. Even to the point, I remember Kenny's trying to break in and have a look at these masts and these aerials that the DTI, you know, like these are private army shit, and he's trying to break into this facility. See if we can get an aerial off the top of this, you know. Like Kenny, like, that's just no, we don't know how it worked. God, fucking hell, St. Paul's, that'll do. Right, up, we'll have a go at that. We'll break in there, and a lot of that stuff. But so much fun. So I've sidetracked here. I don't even remember what you asked. So the pirates run in, and then and the third chapter was the sort of the regular nights, the trade and the gallery nights. So finally, we got a Friday off and running called the Gallery. Opening night, I think it was Oakenfold and Rampling, and we'd done it around my birthday, you know, just to try and up the numbers. And I think it went on for about 6 months, started all right, and then I remember my dad saying, listen, this, you know, it's going down the hill, it's not really happening, because we weren't paying the club rent, if you like, you know, we had a bit more leeway to try and make this happen. I think we survived, you know, like coming up to Christmas is your money maker. So if you can get through that October, November, you're through, and then all you got to worry about is end of Jan, February of the next year, you know, which I think we survived it. And then it just kicked off. off. We wanted 2 guests every week, big name guests. Looking back,
What was the music policy of the night?
we'll start off housey, and we could have a guest who's going to play house. Fine, we're going to have a guest who's going to play trance. We're going to have a guest who's going to play a bit of techno. Because if you're on for an hour and a half, 2 hours, people will go with it.
Yeah.
But then we would make sure the person after or before is either complimenting it or taking it forward. Not playing the same stuff. 4 hours of anything for me, it just does my it does my head in. I love when it starts flipping around. I think that's maybe my style as well, how that's sort of come forward. I'd play a house track next to a trance track, not a problem with me, as long as the right moment it can come in and the track before has got enough beef in it that it will just come down nicely. It's not going to just drop off the edge of a cliff. So that was the thing for the gallery format, and the rest of it's all a bit of a blur, really. Just my career outside the club started to go as well. God, I don't want to go back now. So at the Camden Palace, one of the main DJs there, John Saunderson, who was running DMC at the time, who I'd entered some competitions for the scratching and DMC mix championships. I got put forward. Everyone said, "Oh, Paul, you've got to try it," because I could do a bit of all the scratching, and I was massive into my hip hop as well. So I met John, and we used to hang out at the end of the Camden Palace, listening to him, chatting to him at the end of the night. And oh God, I can't remember how this happened, but I said, "Listen, I've got an idea for a tune." And he put me in touch with this guy. He had a small little bed studio in Milton Keynes, and I went down there, spent a couple of days, and done my first ever track. I called it Love Rush, and it was so my name on the radio was Dectician, because everyone had to have a...
Can't have your real name.
Exactly, even Tony J, who say Tone Man, and Kenny K, because then you could lose your decks, if the DTI really wanted you, if they figured out where your studio was, God forbid, everything was getting confiscated. Decks, oh my God, because the Technics 1200s then were, the Rolls Royces, still are, really. Yeah. And the record, they would confiscate your records, which, there's no way that they're going in the back of someone else's car without a fight. There's no... So that was a real... Not so much a deterrent, but a big concern, So anyway, so I made this record under that name. It was the B-side. When I started playing Trade, I played it at that club, like as a finishing off, or, just to see how it went down. The A-side, not so much, because that was a bit more, not drum and bass, but a bit more ravey. But the B-side just worked straight away. I just read the crowd and it fluked it very possibly, but I just knew it would work at Trade. And I played that for about 5 months before Jerry from Who's Tunes come up for the first time. I never met him before, and said, what is this bloody record? I'd done about 500 white labels, sold most of them through City Sounds in Holborn, and that's how I met Jerry from Hooge, who wanted to put it out, but Trade wanted it to put it out, so Trade had a label quickly invented, and that came out on Trade. And then he put me in the studio to do another track for Hooge, which I ended up doing Rock the House for Jerry, but he wasn't quite on it. He was trying to get me to change it around, and I said, "Listen, it's really working, it's doing all right." And then Darren Stokes, he's going, "Mate, we'll have it. Effective will sign that." So anyway, it came out on Effective. I was doing a load of white labels, because that was great as well. Making a track, go and finding someone to print up some records, and then going out and selling them yourself out of your car, literally walking into records and go, "Listen, mate, I've got this, what do you think?" And then someone going, "Yeah, it flew out, give me 20 more." It was such a buzz, and it was a big step to take, because you were walking in off the street a lot of the time. Anyway, the video, so when they signed it to Virgin, this is a rough idea, we used to go skiing a lot or snowboarding, and I don't know if we were DJing out there, what the excuse was to go out there. It wasn't the video came after. It was said, "Listen, I've signed this track, they've stuck a real small budget," but I said to them, "Listen, we're going skiing, we're going to Val d'Isère for a little ski trip, and send the guy out there, with the camera." And he was really cool. The budget was terrible. He managed to hire all the skidoos, as you see in the video. I said to him, I remember, he said, "Well, how do you want this to look?" I said, "Well, I don't know." I said, "Do you remember the monkeys at the beginning of the monkeys? Hey, we're the monkey." There's a bit where they're all together and it sort of speeds up, and you can see we've done exactly the same bit. We all sort of join hands, like in the Beatles video as well. Yeah. Help, and they all just join hands and they fall backwards into the sand or the snow. In our case, Peasy was in it, Seb, all the boys having a laugh.
Yeah, I mean that came kind of almost in the lead up to that 90s super club era obviously Cream, Gatecrasher, God's Kitchen. You were playing at all these places. How was that era for you? Was it incredibly busy? Great fun? Don't remember much.
I remember there was a lot going on outside London, and Cream was on my radar, and I don't know if I got a bit too connected with the trade, it's a bit too hard, the music, and I think maybe with the record, the Rock the House, maybe, because listen to it now, man, it's so fast, the tempo.
Loads of stuff is it's I can't
crazy.
believe how fast
And
some
I'm
of the stuff
thinking,
is.
what? I think it was just the era.
Yeah.
Everything was it was giddy up. Even looking back at, Rogers, Sanchez or Murillo, the pace was up there. It was all heading towards the 130s. I just remember doing remixes. It always used to start 134. That was it. 134. That's where we start.
Wow.
You're going, blimey, really? It's like, because I think trade really rubbed off on me like that, because by the time I came on there, it had really started to get going, and I couldn't really drop the tempo. I had to keep up, not so much the vibe, the sounds. That offbeat, if you do that at 135, it just sounds so quick, but you can make it sound slower with a bass line that may go on for 8 bars or 16 bars, and it changes like that. So but I look back at some of the tempo, I think, wow, it was a rapid era. So anyway, London, I was trying to get into the Creams and stuff, and then it started to happen, and then it just went off. Friday I was doing 1 or 2, Saturday I was doing 1 or 2, and it was just nuts. Every town had a club that was doing nights, and we were just turning up, and they were packed. And I was just thinking, wow, these promoters are amazing. These clubs are just everywhere's packed. Didn't really know that it was down to the music, the movement, and maybe people wanted to come and see the DJ or hear the DJ, and it was great. It was fantastic. Really, 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 really great. Loved it. Every minute of it. It kept me busy. Still did the gallery going and the club and everything. It was just, and then I had to get out of the pirate radio. Had a couple of really close calls, and then I had to knock that on the head for a while. And the next minute I was doing a show on Kiss. I can actually remember Tony and I doing the demo when Kiss first got their license, and they were looking for DJs.
No way.
We sat in his house and we'd done this, hey, hi, it's Paul and Tony J, and we'd done this like demo. But it would have been well pro, because Tony's got an amazing voice for radio. And we sent it off to Kiss, hoping, please, we could get, leave all this illegal nonsense behind, hanging out of frigging tower blocks, and off to Holloway Road to the Kiss FM. Yes, and it just went wild, and it was all leading up to 2000. It felt, it was just all that mid 90s to the late 90s. It just albums flying out and records, and a fun time.
And obviously, you're still out there playing all these gigs. What's the kind of major difference between now and then, would you say? Is it more enjoyable now? I'm
very humbled and very thankful that these things are going on now. I never, ever thought in a million years. I can remember thinking to myself, I don't know why this thought stays in me, 38. When I get to 38, who's going to want to see a DJ at 40 years old? I mean, my dad's mate is, and it just never, ever registered that Tongy and Carl Cox and Ramplin and these guys are going. And I just think, once you have that love and that music, man, and it's in your system, and that's it. And people, maybe they pick up on that. And at the moment, people are going out again. I don't know where they were 10 years ago, or if they just didn't, or they were just getting on with the rat race and all the bloody things that come in your life. What I can't do, though, is that the touring again. I take my hat off to these guys, that can do that, get on the road, and they're off for 2-3 months, man. And it's in the managerial, they've got their friend, or they're on their own a lot. That is a commitment of enormous proportions to do that. And hat off to the because I've done it in America a lot. I was over in the States a lot while it was still going on. The agent rang me up and said, do you want to go to Mongolia? I go, yeah, 100%, because I've never been there. And I was all about, if I've never been there, it was almost a guaranteed yes.
Yeah.
So I love going to them new places and just seeing some were awful, but a lot of them were amazing. That part of it I miss, but that constant being away and the touring, it's hard, man. It really, really, really is hard. And people say, oh yeah, it's great when you're there and you're doing what you love to do. That bit's the easy bit, because I've got the records, I know what I'm going to play, but I don't know, man. It felt not so much burned out, but just starting to feel, am I coming to that sort of point? I've had it twice. in my life where I thought maybe this is going to be it, you know. But I'm still buying music and I still play shows. But it happened at Trade once, I remember, towards the very end, and that was when I was doing shows. Like, I remember I come down from Liverpool. I didn't drive, but Greg drove back from Liverpool, and I had a really good time there. And it was a 3-4 hour drive, and I had to get myself up and ready for Trade, you know, and walk in there, and didn't know where I was, you know. I was well pissed. Then I was sober up. Then and it was just, I thought, I'm not going to last. This candle is being smashed at both ends here. And then I remember I was in the States years later, just in some hotel room somewhere. I was thinking, I think they'd probably do it with the kids, really, that was, you know, just missing, you know, you just feel like you're alone. You just feel like you're the loneliest person on the planet. And you think, hang on, I'm doing this amazing bloody job here. This is what I always wanted to do. But there's an element to it. I'm, you know, for some reason I was struggling with at that time. Yeah. So yeah, I take a couple of breaks over the years. But as far as now, you know, I've learned a lot of lessons and learned it's not all about working every weekend. Yeah. You know, for anyone and everyone. And there's some great shows. Cream are doing some great ones. Clockwork guys are doing some great ones. There's some other ones popping up. It's great. I love it. It's so cool. And it's great that people want to, you know, come out and make me play and get me out on the road again.
Well, I mean, the gallery is still going. Is that one of the longest weekly
without doubt,
club nights?
Without doubt, in the world. No, there's not one on the planet that has been going every Friday in London. Friday's a tricky day to do this stuff, man. And there's a lot of clubs out there that would die for a regular Friday.
It's obviously now at Ministry. Was it hard to say goodbye to Turnmills as a venue? How was that?
We knew we were going to move because the building had some serious plans for part of that King's Cross development, and Farringdon was going to get completely revamped, and the building had changed hands a couple of times. You know, we nearly bought the basement side of it, you know, because it wasn't really much use to anyone. Anyway, it was going to get knocked down because the foundations had to be redone and blah, blah, blah. So we knew we were going to move. And then my brother got ill. My brother got sick leading up to this whole changeover. And it really, all your focus was on this one date. And then you just didn't care about anything except your family's health. Yeah. That made it all so strange, saying goodbye to that place and the memories. For some reason, the way I feel in my heart, I feel it just it came to its end. You know, my dad died 2003, 2004, no, 2003. That was a big part of it left with him, you know. That was a tough time. And then Danny was basically running the show there anyway, and then really had to step up. And he was a very young man to do that. It's a tough game, the club game, you know. It's very unsociable. It can be very unhealthy. You've got to have your wits about you 24/7. Be very disciplined in yourself, you know. And it's not for everyone. It does take a certain type of person to be in that game. It sucks a lot of life out of you as well. And I never, you know, when my dad passed, I thought, if I have to be there, I would be there. You know, if I have to come down and run it. But I really didn't want to do it. I really didn't like the day-to-day of it. And plus I was travelling like a lunatic. You know, I was here, there and everywhere doing my DJing. So Danny took the reins, and then he really upped the game. The gallery really marched on then. It wasn't one that's been going that long. Every Friday. I literally think we've missed 3 or 4 Fridays. And that's because of like New Year's Eves or some royal death or something. You know, literally it's like incredible. That. Yeah. I'm telling you, it's been going every Friday. Sometimes, you know, it'll be through thick and thin. That team, and it's changed its face a load of times, but you know, Gavin and my brother and some of the old school still coming up ways, pushing it forward, keeping people interested and keep them coming back.
I mean, so many venues in and around London have closed down over the years. Obviously, Ministry remains. Fabric, there was a whole thing to save it, which was successful. How important, and you've mentioned like back in the 90s there used to be a club in every town around the UK. How important do you think these places are, or do you think just tastes have changed in that it's more kind of festivals and one-off things now?
You know, you see taste and trends, you know, they come and go, and in that 90s era there was the Super Club, you know, the 2,000 3,000 venue. Now you've got places like Printworks. These places are amazing, just untouchable. I played that Printworks for the first time. I'm thinking, I don't think I've ever been in a visually a club when it is going off in there.
Yeah.
I mean, and the lighting guy gets it right to the right tune. It's just like, this is in the top 10 here, and I've been to some clubs. But in between that, you know, there was a huge lull. A huge clubs were going by the wayside. You know, there wasn't appetite for it. The music wasn't turning people on. It was getting a bit stale. The DJs didn't really, you know, all the reasons combined. But it comes back in its own little format, and it's a shame to see some of them go, even Turnmills. But, you know, it progresses in a sort of demand. It's the people that create that demand, and you've got to try and tap into it in the best way you can and give them basically what they're after, and then you add a bit on and say, listen, this is what is coming and what you should be doing, but this is what you want, and this is hopefully where you want to go, and you combine the two and you get a nice long run at it.
I mean, you mentioned how you've had these moments, these kind of peaks and troughs in your love for the music, and obviously now it's on, you know, you're still playing all these great gigs that like you say, mentioned Printworks magazine, these great venues. Do you think the scene's kind of going through a bit of revitalization and there's a new crowd coming through?
I don't know if a certain genre has to be forgotten about for a certain time before it can be looked back upon. That's what it feels like. It feels like that sort of 90s, 2000s. I mean, some of the music that came out there, I don't care what anyone says, it really was groundbreaking, some of these records. And we just didn't know at the time. It's just playing that stuff. Oh, that's a really good, that's a massive one. Not knowing that it'll be around 25 years later and still smashing it. I got sent a video again. I get sent videos every week of people playing Commisera, let me show you, at Elro and these festivals in South America, and I get tagged in it. You know, they're obviously playing it a lot slower, as we said, you know, which gives it its own little twist. But seeing these crowds go nuts to it, you know, amazing. Even now though, classics is all right. I was, you know, don't worry, I will drop what needs to be dropped for the right crowd. But the main part of me, I still want to push this forward here. I know what you want, and don't worry, you know, all promoters say, I said, stop, don't worry. I know exactly what to do, and I will try and push it forward. You know, just play that new record, because this you need to hear. You loved that stuff back then, and you were looking for it, and you were buying it, and you were buying the CDs because you were into it. Don't shut off too much. Have a listen to this, because this is as good as that, and it will be 25 years later, and it'll still be around. You know,
it's like people will come to see you because they knew what to expect.
Yeah, I know.
You don't want to just turn up and be like, oh, you're just going to play all the stuff that you played 25 years ago.
No way. And the funny thing, what's come off the back of that is, so if I'm doing a show, so that Printworks one, for instance, last year, okay, it's going to be a certain sort of crowd. I'm playing towards the end. They're going to hear a lot of music. A lot of classics have already been fed to them initially, because that's what gets them all going. So I've got to get the balance right. So I've been making a lot of more music in the studio, just ideas, revamps, just trying to keep the modern sound, beef up some of the sound as well, but just with that nod to that era, that they're going to know that one. They go, yeah. You know, but that crew don't know nothing about. They weren't even born then. Yeah. They're still going to get it. You know, that's worked really well for me. I caught me on the blind side. You know, I'd done something killer. I had this Killer reboot that I'd done, and that came out on Capitol Records, you know, during the summer, and we got Seal to re-sing it and all this cool stuff. I was like, you know, it was amazing. And that's just bounced on, and so I'm in the studio doing new stuff, and there's a little element that I'm always, you know, pulling that influence from that, and even back to when my dad's music, you know, all these great little hooks and lines and things that make your hair stand on end, you can try and bring into a new production. So that's something I'm really enjoying as well. You know, because when the club went, the studio went, everything sort of, you know, closed that chapter, and all the plans that we had to move on just took another sharp right turn. You know, went down a road that just never expected to go down there. Yeah, as life is. When we first got the Technics, I remember I was on to my dad all the time. He'd have these Citronic belt-driven decks, and they would snap, or they would come off the, you know, rails, and the thing would go a million miles an hour. It would just stop, and you'd be in the middle of all the weddings I used to do, and some of the private parties I used to do down there. You know, my dad was like, "Oh yeah, do you want to DJ this weekend?" I'm like, "Yeah, right. You know, be down there for 2. I mean, 2 went in the afternoon." I said, "Hang on, I've only just got back from the club. I've been cleaning it up and restocking the bar all morning. Yeah, we got this wedding." I'm like, "Oh no, not the bloody wedding, please. What's happened to the other guy, Paul, the other DJ? Oh, he can't do it, you know." I'd be like, so all the cool stuff, never ever gonna play to get the other 2 great big milk tray, you know, the trays of records the wedding set, that usually followed the same format, but you'd always get, oh, have you got this one, mate? And you think, well, that's a bit off track, for a wedding.
Yeah.
And they'd be on at you all night, and it's the bride's mate, and can she come? She wants this record, and yeah, that was an experience. But there's probably a lot of DJs out there of that era have been there and done it.
Paying their dues.
Properly paying your dues, man. That is paying your dues, yeah.
But I think that gives you a good sense of reading a crowd, though, I think.
Big
Definitely.
time. Big time. Yeah, you've got to switch. Yeah, because if he wants one tune and the rest of the crowd's not going to like it, and you've got to let him. Funny enough, right? We've just done a script for a film. This probably, hopefully, will happen in 2020, with a guy called Ray Burdis, who's produced the original Craze with the Kemp brothers. It's a small sort of team, and it's financed locally, if you like. And anyway, so we've done this script, and I was telling Ray about this story about this one particular wedding that I'd done, and he found it hilarious. So it's almost the opener of this film. If it ever comes out, who knows? But the script is done. And it was one of them ones that just went, badly wrong. And of course, I was chucked into the middle of it all. The DJ cops the initial stick and aggro if a record goes down.
Yeah.
They don't look at the fuse board or the electrician or someone that's chucked a drink over the mixer. It's, oi, what have you done? Like, I don't usually stop records in the middle of their time. One day, I don't know, this parent will be listening to this podcast and go, oh yeah, who's talking about it? If it ever sees the light of day, I really hope it does. Financing a film is tricky. There's a lot of hurdles. You have to give your life away. But this film is it's about the Turnmills, the three boys, and how the switch happened. How the club just became this own sort of entity and this huge ball that just kept on rolling, and it was unstoppable. And who knows? But that I done last year. That was great.
Oh, that'd be incredible.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. It's just been a bit frustrating trying to get things moving because he's busy doing the stuff. But very kindly, we shared a lot of time together, Ray and I, and wrote the script. Literally, it's done.
No way.
The first scene is this wedding that a lot of DJs can relate to. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like kind of thinking of tracks and stuff. We have talked about what we always do. Like we get our guests to pick 5 tunes for a playlist that goes on Spotify.
Yeah.
The House Culture Perfect playlist, and it's always 5 themes. We all just want to try and get a sense of what some of these tracks mean to you in terms of first memories, why have you chosen them, etc. So what's kind of a catalyst that first got you into house music, dance music? He's chosen Rhythm is Rhythm, the dance.
I can remember my best mate at school, his older brother, coming back from Ibiza with a tape, and it was this early house stuff. Now, I was the kid at school that had the headphones in, day out. I had all the Walkmans, you name it. That was I'd be taping shows, and I remember listening to this. It's like, I never heard this before. But that Rhythm is Rhythm is one of definitely the early vinyl purchases that I have, and it looked like it's just such a raw pressing. It's like a drawing. It's a very simple track, just ticks away. It almost early version, like a trancey track. It has that sort of. Yeah. It just keeps on going, and you get into it, and there's some change in the percussion and the drums, and then the big pad, the string comes in, and it takes it to another level with the chords and a melody, and that has a place. I still like to hear that. In fact, that first record I ever done that I was telling you about, the Dectician one, there was I sampled. That was one of the ones I sampled. The ba-da-bum bum bum ba-da-bum, just a little part of that.
Yeah.
They were just all bloody samples, all chucked together, as most of my bloody stuff is. So that's probably one of my 50 records, my first purchases, if all had to put them, I think that would be a prized possession. I think it's quite rare as well.
Yeah, I think it is.
Transmit, I think it was on.
Yeah.
Derek May, yeah.
And if it was one of those first ones that you bought, you probably know it back to front, heard it a million times in your headphones.
Yeah.
What tracks were you mixing in with that?
I mean, Voodoo Ray, God, I searched high and low for that thing, man. Trying to find that tune.
I mean, how did you kind of know what these things were called? Were you hearing them on Pirates and then they were telling you, or in the clubs?
You know, yeah. I'd hear it out in a rave.
Yeah.
And then the whole focus would be, what is that? The days of when you were looking over the deck, going like this, going round and trying to read it. It's got a C in it. There's an O in it somewhere. There's a phone number in there. You know, and so I remember some DJs as well at Trade, and you know who you are. They'd be putting white. They'd be covering out.
That's just mean. That's just mean.
Because there'd be a certain mob there, and that was me definitely. We'd be looking over. How you doing? You know, doing the old mirrored glasses and looking over and saying, "What is this?" You know. Because I was a spotter, you know, Jesus, if there hadn't been music, I'd be looking out for trains and airplanes probably. You know, I don't care what happens next week, I am going to find this track. You know, I have to find this. It's an obsession. It's probably quite a dangerous one, but I am going to go to every record shop and sing it to them, tell them what I think it's called, you know, play them off the Walkman, off the radio. But you see, a lot of this stuff, some of the Pirates would be doing it. But back then, the Pirates, they were on and they were off, and they weren't on and they were off, and they were shut down and they were turning up. And continuity was a thing to have. So I would be searching, you know, I would do the rounds, go down to Soho, Bluebird, City Sounds, Groove, Tracks. A bit later on, the Plastic Fantastic, you know, just. And then you get to a point in your career where they're giving it to you. I remember saying in City Sounds, going, "Have you got that track?" "No." And then someone would come in and they got slipped the track. I was like, "You." I'm fucking going to be here one day. I'm going to have my own bloody pile, my own box, you know. And then it happened. Yeah, I was like, yeah, come on. I got my own little shelf under the counter. And so even some of them white labels now, they're precious because they have that. They're rare. They're rare. And even the acetates, some of the acetates I got given, you know, they're just one-off rares, 500 or 1,000 or whatever. If they survived, and there's something about a white label. We just had this extra, you know, something about it. And you got one, and I'm going to play this tonight, and no one's going to have this.
Yeah.
This is gonna, and this is the one, you know. And I suppose a bit of ego comes into it, you know. I'm going to play this first. Everyone loves to play it first. Yeah, get my own little pile at the record shop. So that was it. I knew I'd.
You've made it.
Yes.
Talking about floor fillers, we always ask for a go-to floor filler. You said numerous mixes of Faceless Insomnia.
Oh, yeah.
Always does the business still.
You know, well, Sister Bliss, we used to hang out at Trade together. She used to come down there. She was a big fan of it. She was friends, I think, Felix, you know, Don't You Want Me? And Lottie as well, who's our gallery resident. And all the huge crowd and London Records, you know, all the A&R. It was a little family down there. And I think Ayala, Sister Bliss, she could play the piano, if I can remember. You know, she was trained up to a point. And then Rollo was doing stuff for Hooge as well. And then I'm going to jump time here, but they came together and started to make some music. He had that sound, you know. He had a very specific. Drums are great. He was working with a guy called Rob as well. So they teamed up, and you know, Faithless was born. And it was just chuffed to see, you know. And Isla was still DJing Sister Bliss, so she was our resident at the gallery for years. And then the Faithless thing really globally went, and off she went on an amazing journey. So yeah, that track, I've seen it work, I've played it, there's other mixes, and it's just, it has crossed over, it's crossed the boundaries, it's crossed the age group, it's, you know, the generations. It's a huge riff, it's a huge moment. And as long as it, you know, it comes in after in the right way, it's great, because it means more than just a track. It's nice to see someone that you know and grew up with who loves the music as much to really stamp history.
Yeah. And
there wasn't many bands that managed to break out of that dance music. I remember the first time when Commisera got on Top of the Pops. I got a call. It's gone to number 5, right? And you're on Top of the Pops. And I had to do this version, this bloody vocal version, just to appease the radio people, you know. And I really, against my wishes, I really tried to push back on it, but you know, labels and you can't get this radio and it's going to affect, you know, bullshit. And then Capella, remember Capella?
Yeah.
That was called. It had that Susie and the Banshees riff.
Yes, yeah. You got to know the kids, yeah.
You got to know how to make me feel. So that was on, I think, a week before, and it was so atrocious. The live singing or something, and the guy went, "That's it. No freaking more dance. I don't care what number. I don't care. It was a fucking number 1. We're not doing it. It was shit, you know." And so Yeah, we were number 5 and we got kicked out for the beautiful South. Brandon got on it, I think, later on or before. And
yeah,
a few
he
of the
did talk about
K-Class were on it. I think Dave Durrell was on it. Dave Durrell was Pump Up the Volume.
Yeah.
I was thinking, God, looking back, I think, God, Top of the Pops. That was another little tick, a box you had to get, but not I don't know. Did Prodigy get on there? Or did they refuse
I
to do it?
think they refused, yeah.
So anyway, the point being, you tried to create a band because they were all one-off singles with one-off names and one-off samples. And if you could create a band to move forward with, this could go. So, the Prodigy was sort of leading the way and they kept it. And then the Chemicals, which were the Dust Brothers, I think, initially.
Originally, yeah.
But a lot of people were trying it, including me, to try and figure out a way of getting the front person, because it was just hiring a diva that could just belt the vocal because they were all samples, and so anyway, point being, Faithless, it caught and it went and it went outside the UK, which was great. That record, I don't know if it would ever not work. It would just be remixed accordingly for the time.
Yeah.
That's done. It's history. It's in there. It's Blue Suede Shoes by Elvis, or
huge.
Yesterday by the Beatles. For dance, it's in there.
And it's not it's not a one-off for them either, is it? It's they've done so many absolutely monstrous riffs and tracks.
Yeah, no, I've seen them live as well. We're lucky enough to. I've been playing on the set and just see. I actually thought though, because the front man.
It shouldn't work in a way.
Well, it goes off so big.
Yeah.
The moment is so massive. If you were a band playing that in that track, you'd be thinking, Jesus, what, because it just goes, the energy, the electricity that comes from that moment, it's enormous. And I don't know what that must be like going on tour and doing it every night and seeing that over and over. Does it just must get a bit blurred? Because you know what's coming. I don't know if there are moments, here we go, I'm going to have to play that again. I know what it's like, because I've played Commiser, and I think, I know, I even played Commiser last week, and it went off, and I'm like, almost like this, oh my God, go on, play it again, Paul! but then, I don't know, after a while you think, you know what? Fuck it. I'm not going to go up my own arse about this, If people, if they enjoy it and it sends them frigging nuts, and it's a new crowd, and it's a new generation, and they want to, then, fuck it. Yeah, why not? And to be honest, that record, I hate to say it, but it was made in such a rush. It was made in such a hobbity-ho. I listened to it and I cringe at it. It never ever meant to come out, ever. And that's how a lot of these things happen. I spend days banging my head against the wall trying to get the right riff and the right thing and create a masterpiece. And it's something I've slapped together just for the weekend because I know it's going to... that's the one they want to sign. That's the one they want to run with,
It's always the way.
Always, man. You never know. You sort of know, but you never, ever know.
Yeah.
Did Faithless when she's in that studio with Rollo making that track and he's going, I can't get no sleep, tearing off tights with my teeth over the heath. You can be a producer going, I'm not sure about them lyrics, love. What Hampstead Heath? You mean, I've done a couple of tracks over the years, and people have told me, no, that's shit. It's not going to work. That's not great. And I listen to these people, and then a couple of times I've gone, no, you know what? You're wrong here. I'm telling you now, this works because I know it works because I'm lucky enough to play it every week. So a lot of the time, it's good to listen and listen to the right ears. But if your gut is telling you something, this is good. Get it out. So maybe you can't get it out, and get it out yourself. Create it. Just do it. Precious Heart was that one. No one fancied it. Everyone, no way, not going to clear it. Not a big record, not going down. And then cut 2 months later, tell me, this is going to go number one. It's the most played record on Radio 1. I was like, right, let's spend a load of money on a video.
How was it clearing that In Excess sample?
Surprisingly easy.
Really?
Yeah. His father, Michael Ashton's father, ran the estate and somehow had the last. Gave the okay for that sample. We were trying to get it re-sung maybe, and it was a bit of a hot topic obviously because of the situation with him passing away. But that was made for an Australia tour. I was doing this massive show in Sydney. I thought, I'm gonna play something that is such a great moment in a record, and it's just going to be played out again. I never even thought it would potentially come out. And one of the guys from the band was in the show. Got chatting to him, and they said, sort of, we're reforming the band. We've got this other singer who's going to come along, and we're going to finish off what was left off. And they came to London, and they started their London show with the record.
No way.
Yeah,
Wow.
with Precious Art. I was like, my God. Met all the band and stuff, and it was really cool. And yeah, that was really, really lovely. That was fantastic.
It's the biggest seal of approval, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the timing. I think they fancied getting on the road again,
Yeah.
and they had loads of material that needed to be got out there. They're just trying to find that singer and the front man, which is irreplaceable. And then maybe, you know, as they're about to start off, then I come out with that thing, and I think they use it as a bit of a bounce off. And I know we're quite intrigued about how that track was, you know, being played in dance floors, which is the craziest thing, you know.
Yeah.
It's a slowie.
Yeah. And speaking of slowies, we've got a sunsetter chosen Pavarotti, Nessun Dorma.
I can't think. I was thinking when I emailed you, I thought, you know, I've seen so many sunsets over there in Ibiza, and they're all special, but hearing a certain track does elevate it to something else. And I don't know if it was Jason maybe Bizey might have played it, and the timing of it was what done me. And that song, you know, that if you hear that, God, I mean, I never heard it live, unfortunately, but that is one of those songs that would just get into. I'd go because that is the chords, the melody, the singer, the power. And he timed it. I must ask him about, you know, and he just crescendoed, and it finished, and it wasn't intense. It just, and the sun set down, and it was just fucking wow, amazing.
Yeah. We've had some real left field choices for sunsetters.
Yeah, I heard one a couple of years ago, a version of Shout by Tears for Fears.
Yeah.
Dun, 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 the piano at the beginning, and it's a really nice mellow version, and I remember going up to him and going, listen, where, you know, the spotter came out came the paper and pen, where have you get this from, and here's my email address, and I would love to you know, to get that. So I've got that in the collection and put it on one of my off the record. I do these sort of little free albums every year, like chill out albums. Yeah. And that went on the second one, I think. But yeah, the edit and the sunset and the right people and that tune, that was wicked. That was amazing. You know, the big string intro, and then he comes on, and then you just hear it. And it's like, oh, here we go. Because you know what's coming. Yeah. You know where it's going to go, and it builds, and then it drops down into that lovely that part and that melody, and then he just timed it to absolute perfection. It was quality.
Yeah, I think I don't know how they do it. They must count back.
They must know
somehow.
Because they're doing it all the time.
Yeah.
They know when the sun touches that sea in July, in June, in August. I've got 5 minutes, I've got 4 minutes, I've got 8 minutes, and I'm going to edit this to perfection. And it was to perfection. I think it was like a live version, because you start hearing the crowd coming up, and then the crowd starts to clap, you know, the Mambos thing. Just like, mate, that, you know. Yeah, I love, you know, Ibiza sunsets.
You cannot beat it.
You get, you know, with the right crowd and the clapping. No, it's such a great way to send it off. That's the daytimer. See you later. See you tomorrow. Clap it off, and then let's go.
Then the vibe changes, and you're like, okay,
let's go. Make that a large, please, mate. A large vodka. No singles. No half a shandies. Yeah, it's time to step it up.
So we always ask for a tearjerker as well. Chosen a Whistle Song by Frankie Knuckles.
Yeah,
it's a beautiful
song, man.
Yeah.
And you know what? I couldn't think. There's loads more in there, like soul touchers. But that one sprung to mind as soon as I saw that question. Yeah, no vocals, just a nice, lovely melody, catchy little hooks. Sabres of Paradise as well is another one.
Smoke Belch.
That just came out of my head just out the blue there. Yeah. I know why. That is a tune. Yeah. That is something, you know, and regualr to have the bollocks just to go, I'm going to make something here that is on the verge of, if not of a modern day Mozart type thing, you know, with electronic equipment. That is a tune. But yeah, Whistle Song. And you know what?
It's very similar to Smoke Belch almost.
Yeah, it's just got some little beats. You know, some nice little rhythms behind the Frankie Knuckles one. But I've always, if I'm watching a film or program, and usually at the end, and I think, I would put this tune there, you know, because and that one's come up a lot, the Whistle Song. I just think that'd be such a great ending to quite a meaningful part to a film, you know. Hopefully if I get this film off the ground, that track is in there. That track is definitely in there. Remember it being the end credits is where I see that. Yeah. Just people walk out, hopefully. This is what I envisage. The dream is you end on the high. the happy ending, you know, but with a bit of some things still to be tied up, but you know, you're not sure how it's going to end with that song coming on, dun 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 dun, and maybe a still and the credits start rolling up and that tune playing. There's people walking out listening to that. Yeah.
And it's daylight outside.
Yeah.
Just smiling. I love it.
Everyone's off there with rocker. So that's another tune that you'd love to hear it a bit more, but it just, you think, oh, it has to be either early in the set or
it's quite light.
It's very light.
Yeah.
It's almost, you know, like a chill out set, but it's not, because it runs at that, I don't know, 120 tempo, whatever it is, and you know, and it's a nice nod to an amazing man that I remember meeting him for the first time. Frankie, I am in complete awe. I'm ready to get on my bloody knees here, you know, because buying them records, what we were talking about earlier. And he was like, how you doing, Paul? You know, knew my name, knew even the madness that I was been making, that it was nothing on his tip. It just blew me away that, I don't know, you sort of think, oh, he's only going to be interested in that type of music. And maybe the UK was a huge event when I used to see him come over, you know, and we used to just come over and pack out places for him and love it and love his music. I could go and listen to him one weekend and go and listen to a hardcore DJ the next, and then go, you know, that was me and my friends, you know, we were not, it's going to be that and it's going to be that all the way. It's, you know, and he's a lovely guy, and knew my shit, knew what I was all about, you know, which, you know, oh God, that's it. I've just made my week, my month, my year. So yeah, that, when I read that question, for some reason that tune just flew in there.
And a last tune. We've already covered this one though. Play
it again, Paul. Here it comes.
Let me show you by Camissa.
You know, people get the arse if I don't play it. Someone go, what the fuck? I've come all the way down from Scotland, Liverpool. You know, it's that love-hate relationship that I've had with it. So I get sent the videos. I get tagged into all these clubs that are still playing it. Big events. You know, a lot of people, thousands and thousands of people at some place, and some of the DJs, I don't even know who they are. I went out to see Eats Everything in Ibiza at Elbow. Went out there for a day out. I didn't ask him. I didn't even know. I didn't expect. You know, we were just in there rocking, and I heard that thing. Oh no, surely not. Yeah, bang, videoed it. You know, Destroyer. It's that bass line. It's not. You know, it's deep dish.
Yeah.
It's theirs. It's. You know.
But it's just toughened up, isn't it?
It's all it is. And there's so many records. There were records out there, because this is where the tempo thing comes in. If I was playing an Up Your Ronson, for instance, or an early Cream, so it was housey, a lot more housey. But you couldn't get it banging, you know, like towards the end of the night of a gallery or a trade. I couldn't slow it down enough on the deck. And it would sound odd if I did sometimes. And that Sandy B was one of them. It was a great tune. When that bass line came in, the reaction was, you know, and there was a few like that, housey records that, well, I want to play that here, but that's not going to work, because they're not really, the vocals too long, it's too much, it takes too long to get to. So I was doing a Radio 1 Central Selection at Amnesia with Rampling and Pete Tong, and that were the days of, between them two, they had everything. Pete would have every new tune under the sun coming out, because he has to get it first, otherwise he's not going to play it. Danny was doing the Love Groove Party on Saturday nights at Radio 1. Radio 1 was the powerhouse then. It was the dance show worldwide, you know. So how am I going to have something different to play? You know, last thing I want to do is start crossing over. You know, Pete's going to have a couple of tasty ones up front, same with Danny. That was how that was born. Just knocked together at the end of a session. I think, if I remember rightly, I had remixed Beach Ball, Nail and Kane for London, and we finished quite early, and that's how that record came about. You know, I had a couple of hours, and I knew this gig was looming, and so, right, I'm just going to go for it. I'm going to take that bass line. I had all these samples and bits of stuff I was listening to that I picked up from the States. Just bish, bash, bosh.
Check this out, Pete.
Watch. and you know, so you played it, and because of the powerhouse that Radio 1 was, and Pete and Danny, there's a lot of A&R guys there, a lot, hanging around, making sure, play this, play that, you know, get the report out on the Monday, and everyone was just nuts. What what was that version you played of that? And it just instantly went absolutely nuts. Oh God, and then that turned into a saga as well. God, if you had another hour, I'll tell you about it. getting that record out, and then Tony DeVitt was trying to do, they got him to do a remix of the original, and Champion Records, didn't like it, obviously. And then it escalated to the point that Tony got barred from Turnmills. Lawrence said he was never going to do trade there ever again.
What?
Our dad locked the club, walked off with about 600 people outside in the queue, all because of that record. It's weird, the journey starts so good, and then all the bullshit comes with it. And there was a lot of nonsense that came with that. It all got sorted out and everyone got rectified. But me and Tony fell out for a bit, and then my dad and Lawrence went freaked out because of Tony was the DJ, the resident, and it looked like he was being used as a pawn to try and stitch the record up, And it was just it was a hassle, man. It was just horrible. Musicologists were on my case about this sample and that. And I remember Larry Lush, who I haven't mentioned once, it's terrible really, but he was the guy that ran the studio, was my director of music. Everything went through him and his fingertips. Great guy, very inspirational, very open-minded, would try anything. And I mean anything. And so they were saying, it's a sample. I said, it's not a sample. He said, I can tell it. So I said, it's not. So after all that, he sampled my record. I Deep Dish, you got a cut of it. They own rights of that record because I couldn't find the note, the two notes. And we were going back and forth and trying to find it. And I had the keyboard sitting in the studio that it came from. And we just didn't know. We were trying to make it. You were trying to make the sound with the resonance. And it's a keyboard called the Juno 106, which we had. We had two of them. And it was on one of the presets on Bank B, 46, I think it was. And so I got Larry. Larry played the Steptoe theme tune. So when we handed over to the musicologist to prove that he's got this, I've got it somewhere, the Steptoe and Son theme tune being played in that do do do, it's going do 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 to prove it is not the sample. We've got the sound. We've got it from the guys that made.
Yeah.
I mean, one of Deep Dish was really freaking out about it. I can understand it. It's a big ass sample of it, but I never denied that. And hopefully Sandy B gets most of the credit for it.
Well, I'll kind of wrap this up then. Our final question is always: we are obviously house culture. You've been part of this culture since the very beginning. What does it mean to you?
It was a happening, a movement, a trend, a bit of youth culture that I was so lucky. I thought I'd missed it because there's a little age group a couple of years above me that talk about the first, the real acid house days, and I was young, very young when it was coming in, but I always thought I was playing catch up with it. But to be sitting here talking to you about music and that is still going, is still putting people on a dance floor and sharing experiences through the music, I just feel very, 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 very lucky. And sometimes I forget that, and I like to pinch myself and kick myself not to forget that. It's been part of my life since I can remember, music, and then to be into the entertainment side of it through my dad, the stages and the chapters, and still be involved. Yeah, it's a dream. I've learned a lot, experienced a lot. I just feel really lucky to be doing it still and enjoying doing it. I don't know. It's a good question, really. House music, man, is still happening. To me, it's all house. Yeah, you call it trance. The vibe of it is house music, and I still feel a bit a part of it. And it's still my little thing. There's definitely a reference to something housey on my gravestone. Something about house music. A little smiley face on there or something. Yeah, it's great and lucky to be part of it still. House music, baby.
That's the perfect summation. I think it's a brilliant place to end. Thank you so much. Been awesome.
Yeah, hopefully there's enough in there to
House culture.
Weren't we lucky to hear all of that? House music, baby, indeed. What a guy Paul is. Yes, he is very tall and also very gracious to allow us to come over to his house and host us for an afternoon of recording and reminiscing. Wasn't it exciting to hear about the potential film based on Turnmills in the works? Fingers crossed we get to see it happen and that the whistle song is on the end credits. Honestly, between that one and the film of Tony Pike's biography we chatted about with Dawn Hindle, we could be in for a thrilling period of seeing Clubland on screen. If you want to hear more of what Paul is up to during this lockdown period, make sure you go to his Facebook page where he's been hosting some incredible mix parties that have travelled through his extensive record collection. For our own soundtrack, you can hear all of the tunes that we discussed on our playlist on Spotify. Get started by searching for House Culture Perfect Playlist, and within that you'll find not only the choices from Tall Paul, but from every other guest we've had on both seasons of the podcast so far. There's all kinds of stuff in there, covering every facet of house music culture, so give it a shuffle and turn it up loud. Once you're listening to that, please help support this podcast by loving, liking, tweeting, sharing and rating or reviewing us on Apple. This last bit is really important. It actually does make a difference. So say something nice and we'll give you a shout out. This time around, the shout out goes to WC Slingsby, who reviewed us on Apple saying that we have some great interviews with house music royalty. You got that right. Just wait until you hear who else we've rolled out the red carpet for. And if you don't want to miss any of those announcements, hit up our Instagram feed at houseculturenet or follow the hashtag #TrueHouseCulture. Not only will you be fully informed about the podcast, you'll also get connected with other house music lovers the world over. And finally, you can get in touch with me, Matt Rouse, directly on Instagram at DJ Matt Rouse. Thanks for listening, stay safe, and see you next time.
House culture.